Are you ready? It is time. This meeting is being recorded. I see the attendees streaming in. Fantastic. We got 20 people on already. Chad, Charles, you feeling good? You about ready to rock?
Ready to rock, buddy.
All right, good deal. God, we got 66 people already on in like 1 minute. That's pretty cool. Hey, if you're watching, I'm letting just the last few people get on. We're showing like 93 attendees so far. Give me like 30 seconds and we will start the webinar. But before we start, and before I introduce these guys, and while we're so a few more people clicking on to attend, Chad Gillespie and I go way back. I bet I've known you for how many years now, Chad? 10 years, maybe?
Close. Yep.
Something like that. I started using Mitsubishi equipment in 2008 or 9. Do you remember Scott Ginder's house that we did, an architect locally? That was the very first project in 08, 09, somewhere in that time frame. Well, I think I've known you this entire time. So we go way back. Charles is new. You and I are new acquaintances, Charles, but he's been with Mitsubishi a long time. But if you saw the webinar, you saw this METUS logo that I just wanted to clarify what this METUS thing means. And Chad, if you would kind of spell that out for us before we get rolling, I think that's actually kind of helpful and material to what we're talking about today.
Sure. So METUS is Mitsubishi Electric Train US. And a few years back, we formed a joint venture with Train Technologies. And so really what it does for the residential side is there's really, as far as our equipment goes, there's nothing changed. It allows the Train and American Standard distributors to have full access to our equipment, whether it's Mitsubishi or if it's Train or American Standard branded. So again, for our legacy distributors, there is no change for them. And again, there's really no change with our product when it comes to the residential lineup.
And what's cool about that in particular, Chad, is that, let's say if you haven't used Mitsubishi equipment before and you're in a market that you've already been using, let's say, Train or American Standard. I actually used a lot of American Standard before I moved to Mitsubishi, and I put 1 or 2 American Standard units in since. You now have distribution potentially in your town or your area that you didn't before. So don't be fooled by the name, this METUS name. It's still the same Mitsubishi equipment that I've always been using. But this is kind of a joint venture, mainly on the distribution side. Mitsubishi is still a separate company. They still make all the equipment. It's made all over the world, and it's their engineering, which I think is so awesome. With that being said, Chad and Charles, why don't you give us a quick 1-minute bio on your background and what you guys do for Mitsubishi, and then we're going to jump into controls and what we're talking about today.
Sure. I'll start. Chad Gillespie, sales manager for our performance builder team. We started this team about just over 5 years ago, and we've brought on we have 8 or 9 in the field now, and we'll be bringing on a few more people here in the next 6 months. What we target is trying to get builders and architects and help them focus on building, better than they are today, with better equipment, being smarter about their designs. We've had so many builders that have had issues with comfort or performance. And what our team does is we are a sales and business development team. And, again, our goal is this not only to have, builders use more of our product, but really to help educate the industry and be partners with, organizations like with Matt and Build Network and EBA and other organizations where we're really trying to help educate the contractor, the designer, make more of a holistic approach to the design team so that we really get a better build. We really wanted to talk about controls because it is critical to get our systems and have them work properly. And I am thankful to have Charles on the phone today because he has been really good for us to help get new products in the pipeline. So with that, I'll pass it over to Charles Miltiades.
Thanks, Chad. Yeah, it's been a great 12 years of Mitsubishi. Growing up through the ranks, I'm the director of the controls products. But when I started, we really didn't have a whole lot of controls options. So you pretty much had the handheld controller for your mini split, and since then we've built many different types of indoor unit heads and many different types of controls options, which we feel like is really added a lot of value and lended to the creativity of our contractors to deliver the best experience for our homeowners over the years. So that's what I'm committed to doing, is bringing more options and better options and better experiences when it comes to using our equipment, and not just owning it and enjoying the benefits of the efficiency and the reliability, but also the experience of using the equipment.
Awesome, Charles. Gentlemen, glad to have you both on today. And before we get into what we're talking about today, which is controls, I do want to mention for all of you on the webinar that's live, we want you to ask questions, and we're going to leave at least probably half the time to do Q&A. I've already been chatting with a couple of you. I see a bunch of friends on the webinar. Armando Cabo, an architect who uses your equipment all the time. Seifert Brothers, a builder that I know in New York. There's a bunch of you that are already using this equipment. I want you to ask specific questions about your projects and how to use controls differently or better, or just general questions about this. So use the Q&A tab for that, if you will, because as these guys are talking and we're discussing this, I'm going to be scrolling through the Q&A tab, and that's where I'll pull these out. And if you're not watching this live, if you're watching this recorded later on YouTube or on buildshownetwork.com, join us for these live events. Anything can happen. You never know when when your question is going to get answered. So we'd love to have you in the future. That being said, I think you guys know my house under construction, which I'm about a month away from completion, is literally getting the controls installed today. I've got Airright over there, which is my local HVAC contractor. And I thought it might be kind of cool for Chad, for you to kind of review what are the controls that are being used at my house, and what is kind of different about those controls than maybe what's been in the past or than what people have traditionally opted for.
Sure. So with Matt's house, and this is it's a great way to bring up some of the questions I've seen as far as where our products can be used. And one person had asked, I certainly use Mitsubishi and Casita, but not a whole house. Our products, and Matt does a really good job with his house. There's a lot of different types of products in his house, fully ducted products, ductless products. So it's a good mixture. So, when we talk about doing a whole house, it's certainly the majority of the time when we design whole houses, it's generally not all ductless. The majority of that would probably be ducted systems or ductless with a combination of one or two heads like Matt's is. Again, it would be really tough to do a whole new house with the lower loads that we see today to have an air, one head in each room. In some areas you can, if it's on a multi-zone outdoor, it might be problematic because of the turn down ratio. So again, with Matt's house, we've got a lot of different products, and Matt wanted to have control over his rooms in each zone. So we use the MHK2 product, which is one of our wireless stats. And he's also going to be connecting that to Kumo Station, or it's going to be Kumo Cloud, which allows him to control that from wherever he is. And it's a great product. And when we talk about Kumo, we'll allow Charles, since he has helped develop that product in itself and its future development and where it's going, we can talk more about that. But, one of the things we really looked at when I asked Matt about, what did he want to do with his house? Did he want something really, really robust controls wise to control all of his systems? So in Matt's house, he has our heating and cooling. He also has a pretty awesome Zender ERV, and as well as Ultra Air dehumidifier. So with those three mechanical systems, I was like, Matt, do you want to control all three with ours, or do you want to, do it individually? And so he preferred decoupling the systems and So our system is only controlling the heating and the cooling. But again, we can do more than that. We could control all three, and I'll leave that question if you want to go into that to Charles. But
Yeah.
right now it's the HK2 and the Kumo.
And let me jump in real quick, Chad, on that. It's been fun building my house because I've been both client and builder. And that's been fun across the board in all kinds of ways. Like, you know, the last time I did a project for myself was 15 years ago, and it was a remodel. So this is a whole different deal, basically building a new house. And so over the years, I've done all kinds of different controls for clients. There's been all kinds of different requests. Some houses, clients wanted to be able to control everything in the entire house on their iPad. Or it wasn't that long ago where I remember I had a client who said, I want to control everything on my iPod, and I want you to put a dock in the wall for my iPod in every location, including this stone patio. And I literally put a dock with you. Remember the old like 12-pin Apple connections before Lightning came out?
Mm-hmm.
We put a 12-pin dock in a stone wall. And I was like, are you sure? Oh, yeah, I want to be able to dock my iPod, charge it, pull it out, like do everything wirelessly in the whole house. And literally, we finished the house, and a month later, and Apple switched to Lightning. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. You know, it wasn't long, maybe a year later, that we were ripping that dock out of stone, and I had to bring the mason back to a brand new house to put a new docking station in. It's when I said, look, this is crazy. Yes, we need wireless, or yes, we need wireless, but wired can still work. But the other big thing that I have learned over the years is I really like the reliability of staying with one manufacturer to do what they do best. So in my house, for Mitsubishi, I have Mitsubishi controllers. For my Ultra Air, I have an Ultra Air controller. For my Zender Fresh Air ERV system, I have a Zender Fresh Air controller. And I'm not trying to integrate it all into, let's say, Control 4 or Lutron, or I'm not trying to get a Nest thermostat to control multiple different things. My experience with that in the past has been, you can get it to work usually on the day they move in, but with updates, with software changes, any of those kinds of things that a new breed of controller has, now all of a sudden you're going back and changing things. So for instance, I put a Control 4 system in my house, I don't know, 6-7 years ago at my remodel, and it was a retrofit. And I didn't even have my HVAC controlling it. I just had a Nest controller at that particular house. But having several devices into Control 4, and several of them were updating with internet updates, and I all the time had to try and figure out what to do to get the system to work properly. And for me, that meant calling an expensive tech at $150 an hour out to do it. And so I'm a big proponent of reliability, robustness, and having separate controllers. Now, that being said, though, Charles, some people do want everything fully integrated, and I know you have that possibility. Walk me through some scenarios of what that might look like for somebody who wants controls that are more integrated or using other third parties.
Yeah, I mean, so we have lots of options when it comes to integration. Our probably best two options for integrating to other third parties are going to be our A1M device, which is basically a Modbus or BACnet. It does either on board, but it can connect via Modbus or BACnet to a Control 4 or to one of those other systems. And then the one that probably gets used the most is actually our Thermostat Interface. So you basically go buy whatever thermostat that you want. It's either part of a bigger system like Control 4, Crestron, or Savant, or you just buy one of those DIY thermostats like a Nest or an Ecobee, and you can just attach that to our interface, and then you're now controlling our system with your favorite thermostat out on the market. So we have both of those options for either preference.
Okay.
One thing to go, Matt, because this is a question we get a lot. I want to make sure we hit it before, because I see tons of chats and questions coming in. But Charles, we'll get a lot of questions about the functionality of our systems with the thermostat interface, and we know a lot of the other mini split manufacturers don't have full functionality with theirs. So can you just for everyone explain our functionality with if you went with the Ecobee or Nest to our systems and how that functions.
Yeah, there's a couple of settings that you can configure differently depending on how you want to operate. But essentially, there's kind of two main ways to control. There's the first way is, you have the thermostat bring the unit on at 100% anytime it calls for heating or cooling, and it kind of ramps up using the inverter and gives you that soft start, but it goes to kind of wide open like a standard piece of equipment. And then when the thermostat is satisfied, it will tell our unit to turn off. The other way to do it is to have the thermostat in first stage actually tell the thermostat to kick on and cooling or heating, and then the interface will actually run an algorithm and learn what the room temperature set point should be, and it'll try to modulate to that set point that it learns. And over time, it looks at the onboard thermistor in the indoor unit head and can see how fast the room temperature is changing, and then it can see when the thermostat becomes satisfied and stops calling for heating and cooling, and then that's how it learns. So it'll try to track that set point and modulate to it. And then if the second stage kicks on, then it would ramp up to 100% and make sure it meets that load on time and under budget.
Gosh, as you were talking, I was reading through. We've already got 10 or 12 really good Q&A questions that are going to take a while to hit. But before we jump on to Q&A, I do want to spend another minute or two talking about what's different about Mitsubishi and controlling it than, let's say, traditional systems. If someone has been using more traditional equipment, and in fact, I wonder if we should even explain what we mean when we say a one-to-one system versus a multi-split. Chad, will you take that question and
Sure.
walk us through for a couple minutes? What separates Mitsubishi from the competition out there
Sure.
of, let's say, traditional equipment? And then what does that mean for controls as well, as we talk about this specific topic of controls?
Sure, and I'll address that, and then like Charles, when I was thinking about it, just some of the applications where we have multiple systems in one thermostat. So, when we talk about our products, Mitsubishi, all of our products are variable speed compressors, and we have our traditional air handlers, just like you would see with anybody else's product, Trane or Carriers. So we have traditional air handlers. We have horizontal air handlers that are shaped like a suitcase. That go in the ceiling generally. We also have our ductless products, which a lot of people are familiar with, whether it's on the wall, a ductless floor mount, or in the ceiling, the cassette types. So with our controllers, there's lots of different ways to do it. We have a handheld controller that comes with a lot of the M-series products. We also have obviously the wireless controllers we just talked about. And then we do have some wired controllers, and then there's lots of other variations of controls, going through our whole product lineup into our, light commercial line, into our, single phase commercial line, and then up to our 3-phase. So some of the interesting things and I'd like to ask to Charles how they work is if you have a whole house and you have 3 or 4 different heads, some of the questions we get, if I just want the whole house to be 72 degrees and I really don't care, what's the simplest way to do that? Or sometimes when you have like a really big room, like we've done a lot of, large auditoriums or theater rooms where they actually chose to go with wall hungs, and they want all of those to operate on one stat. So these are just some of the questions we get. So I don't know, Charles, if you want to just answer those, before we get into some of the other questions that are coming in.
Yeah, and in fact, while we're doing that too, Charles, why don't you jump in a screen share and show us some of those images that you've got on some of those options?
Yeah, okay, let me just.
All right, got it.
So here's a picture of our app from the App Store. This is basically, in my mind, the best way to kind of pull all of those various systems into one control app. And like you were saying earlier, Matt, when you want to stick with the manufacturer's best option, this is really our best option. So these screens are just kind of showing on the first tile here, our system managing multiple indoor units. And these can be various types, like Chad was describing. And then if you click on one, it automatically determines what type you have, and it tells the app what features are available here. So you don't have to kind of figure that out. It knows what you have and what features that are available. So the user is just controlling to the level of complexity that the indoor unit head offers. For example, a wall unit has a lot more features because it has vane direction and fan speed and all of those kinds of things, whereas a standard kind of air handler that we sell is not going to have vane direction, for example. And you probably don't change fan speed as much, and it doesn't have as many fan speed options. So the app knows how to deal with that. Then you can set up notifications like any other kind of thermostat app. And we have some pretty cool integrations as well built into the app. You can get emails for certain things, and you can tie into smart plugs to bring on other systems. When the unit kicks on, you can have it integrated to kick on something else as well, like a pull-through exhaust fan or something like that. And then this is our kind of scheduling algorithm where you can program events like your normal thermostat schedule for starting the day and ending the day, and changing set points for unoccupied periods. So this is kind of, it's basic to show it this way, but it has a lot of complexity behind the scenes, and it's dialed in and tuned for our equipment, and it only works in our equipment, and it's matched to our equipment. So it's definitely the best option, and you can get as many zones as you want in your house on here and control them all from the same spot. And it's actually the cheapest. Yeah, I was gonna say it's actually the cheapest way to do that too, because when you start adding the other options, you're adding extra hardware. So
I was going to mention, Charles, I like this a lot. This is what we're installing at my house. And that little controller you see on the right goes at each one of the locations. And I actually have 5 zones in my house. And just briefly, just because it's kind of interesting, in my garage, I have a mini split head tied to a 1-to-1, meaning it's just one compressor outside and one mini split head. And I plan to just kind of lightly condition my garage, even though it's very fully insulated. And then in my house, I've got a 2-story house, and my first floor level is a medium static pressure ducted mini split, meaning the compressor outside has a freon line to a ducted unit that's kind of a relatively small unit. My friend Christoph Irwin always refers to them as pizza box units. That looks like about 6 pizza boxes stacked up with a plenum out, and that's doing my main first floor. In my kitchen, I have a separate unit that's a recessed ceiling unit that has a grill, and we'll have a video that Chad and I are going to do at some point in the next 60 days or so, kind of the final equipment tour of my house. So stay tuned for that if you're Build Show fans on the line here. And then in my family room, I have one big kind of open space, living room, family room, dining rooms, all one big space. I put a mini split head on the wall in that family room to act as a party load. And I saw a couple of you in the Q&A mention that you're passive house builders. And at least one of you, I forget who it was, mentioned, what do I do in a passive house, a really low load house, when I don't need a lot of cooling, but when I do, I might need a lot of it. And I don't know how I got this term, but for some reason back 20 years ago, I always heard someone talk about a party load or a party system, party zone. I remember a house I worked on 15 years ago that had 2 giant American Standard units in fully ducted. Each one was probably a $10,000, $15,000 system. And the clients wanted 2 of them because one of them was their normal I'm home unit, and the other one was I've got 30 people over at a party and I really want to cool the heck out of the house and not worry about kids running out the doors or whatever. I love the idea of having a second unit, but a fully ducted massive system is stupid expensive. Whereas at my house, one additional mini split head tied to that same compressor outside. I actually have 3 zones tied to one compressor. And remember, one of the things we like about Mitsubishi is this VRF technology, variable refrigerant flow. So that compressor can run at any number of whatever speeds it needs. It's really variable. from like 15% of capacity all the way up to 100% capacity. So now my ducted medium static pressure system, when it's just the 6 of us and the dog in the house with my really well insulated air sealed house, it's like a little 4-cylinder engine. It's just humming along. It's just running and cooling my house and everybody's happy. But all of a sudden I have a group from church over and I got 30 people in my house and there's dogs running everywhere and the kids are running out the door. Well, man, I need some extra capacity. Rather than putting one big oversized system in or 2 big ducted systems, I put an extra mini split head in my main living room space that I'm only going to use as my party load. And I'm super excited about that because the ability to keep your house at, let's say, 75 or 76 on a party night in the summer when it's, 95, 100 degrees out, that's genius and is going to work really well for me. So it'll be off 99% of the time, but the 1% of the time when I need it, I've got that V8 engine, or 2 4-cylinder engines, which equate to a V8 engine basically to really cool down my house. And so with these 5 zones, I'll have individual controllers for those in my house. I really like a wall unit. It makes sense to non-nerdy people, my kids, my wife, people that don't care about the HVAC system or the technology. They just want to go over to the wall and go, oh, I'd actually like it to be 72 instead of 74. But for me, I really want to be able to pull that Kumo Cloud app out and control every zone and say, hey, I've been on vacation for a week. We're coming back from an RV trip. I set everything in the house at 78 degrees. I'd like to turn it down to 74 before I get home. Boom, I can do that all from the road. What did we miss on this? We're, believe it or not, we're 30 minutes. We're halfway through our time already, guys. Can you believe it? And we haven't even gotten a single Q&A yet.
I will tell you one question that I know that I've had a couple builders, and certainly in our colder climates, one of our team members, Sean Lamons in Colorado, does a lot of this where he's in cold climate. And, one of the things they ask us is, as we all, in our industry of higher performing homes are trying to move more towards electrification of houses and buildings and smarter renewable energy, we still have cold climates where, our products can work down to, negative 13 or negative 17 degrees, depending on the product. But the question is when you have really cold climates that are going to go down to negative 30, how do you integrate another fuel source, whether it's hydronic heat or if it's just a boiler in the Northeast? And, that's the question where we get, how do we integrate that and how does that work? So Charles, this is, again, your strength. Do you want to just kind of talk about a few scenarios where we could use that setup for backup heat and use our product, 80% of the time, but when it gets really, really cold, we need another source?
Yeah, so we have a product called Kumo Station, which is designed to optimize and maximize really heat pump runtime in those colder climates where you may have some backup heat or electric heat or some kind of delivered fuel like propane or oil, or you may have even gas, and you just want to run off the electrical grid. Maybe you're getting good pricing because you have an EV, and you want to run the electrical grid as much as possible, even in a gas territory. But what Kumo Station does is it basically says, all right, in these temperature ranges, we're going to let the heat pump operate 100% of the time, and we're not going to try to, we're basically going to lock out the backup heat. And if the outside air temperature gets below a certain temperature, then we'll let them work together, kind of primary, secondary. And then if it gets too cold for the heat pump, and we're saying, if it's at minus 20, we're saying the heat pump's not going to be very efficient there. You probably want to be switching over to your backup heating source, or maybe your fossil fuel or whatever else you've got, maybe hydronic or something like that. So it'll actually have the backup heat be the primary heating source in that scenario.
Sure.
I don't know if you guys caught that. I lost you at the very end there, Charles. Your internet went down for a second there. Looks like.
I heard you, but that's okay. I think he was pretty much wrapping it up. Yeah. I see these questions blowing through. So Matt, we may want to get to them. There's some great stuff in here that we can address. So I think they're really some good stuff here.
Yeah, let's jump in. There's a bunch over here, guys. If you don't mind, I'll serve up the questions, and if I need to jump in and answer, if it's for me, I will. But otherwise, I'm going to direct these to either Chad or Charles. AJ Callaghan has a couple of good questions on here. I see major issues in the residential side with microbial growth. I'm assuming that he's meaning inside the ductwork potentially. Anything in line to address this, and serviceability of these systems seem challenging. I'm not sure the exact question here, but I'm wondering if his question is, would your controls do things like, say the UV light is needing service on a third-party installation, or is there a filter change notification? I'm assuming this question is regarding controls. How would third-party or service or maintenance control things work in the Mitsubishi side of the world?
Charles would hit that first.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, first off, yes, if you have Kumo Cloud, you're going to get alerts. So you'll see problems and error codes. And we're actually building a contractor community at the moment where you'll be able to integrate into those alerts for your customer and get leads from your customer to that'll be seeded with all the information you need to help troubleshoot and solve the problem on site. But today you can actually, just partner with your homeowner and get those alerts remotely and help them troubleshoot, first before you show up on site, and then you can show up and follow your normal practices with gauges and error code, reporting.
Okay. Chad, this question's for you. This is from Kurt Kimmel. Sounds like Kurt might be an architect. He's designing a 3-floor house with multiple bedrooms, and they want control by floor or by zone, where maybe you shut off the bedrooms most of the day except for at nighttime. Would you be able to do that with a ducted or ductless Mitsubishi system? And does Mitsubishi incorporate active duct flaps or duct what's the other word?
Zone dampers.
Zone dampers, that's right.
Yeah. So with a 3-story house, it depends on the size of each floor. A lot of times, depending on the size of the house, we could use some of our small air handlers. And in a lot of townhomes, we do this where we have a small horizontal air handler the size of a suitcase. It's a large. The capacities range from very small up to 3 tons. What they could do if you took, depending on the load, you have a smaller size. In townhomes, the best way to do it is put 1 per floor. And so each floor has its own very small ductwork. There's no vertical chases. You're not having stratification between floors. So if it's the 3rd floor in the summer, say I'm in Virginia, it's going to get really hot on the 3rd floor. That could be in cooling, but in the morning, it may need heating on the 1st floor, where it's a fall morning and you get a lot of solar heat gain on that 3rd floor and a lot of heat rise. So you can do it with 3 separate units, whether they're ducted. You could also use ductless and do the same thing. So you could, have them on their own zone and then set those temperatures for each floor, and certainly break it down that way. The last part of that question is, do we work with zoning dampers? We do. Our air handlers, our ducted systems do work with air zone, and we certainly can do that. It's generally, we have a lot less of that because we have smaller systems to zone by area. So we don't use it a ton, but we certainly can with our ducted systems. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Chad, I want to jump in with a quick example of a house that I saw that was very similar to this. My buddy Steve Basic designed a passive house that I toured in in Massachusetts with Mitsubishi, and it was a retired couple that had a son that came back to visit often, and it was a 3-story house. And Steve built a super bomber envelope with really high quality glass, such that basically there was a mini split head on each floor of the house, and then they used air share fans from this hallway, basically where the Mitsubishi head was, into these bedroom spaces. And the homeowner had been there 3 or 4 years and absolutely loved it. Said it worked great. And so what was cool about it was in the scheme of things, a really cheap system. The homeowner loved that they spent a bunch of money on their glass and their envelope, but put in a pretty darn affordable HVAC system. It was like, 3-head house basically. And so the cost for install were low, the cost for running were low, and he let his envelope do the heavy lifting. And then the Mitsubishi did what it was good at, which was heating and cooling on a pretty modest install budget. And speaking of that, I've seen a bunch of people ask questions about cold climates. Either Charles or Chad, will you tell us about hyperheat and your heat pump technology and what kind of temperatures you can still get heating output down to?
Sure, I'll take that one. So hyperheat is a technology we developed for cold climates, and there's several variations within our product lineup of how they work. Whether it's within our compressor itself that actually spins faster and has neodymium magnets, and you recoup some of that heat. We also have systems that reintroduces refrigerant back into the compressor to get higher temperatures. So there's several different versions of it, but the gist of it is that we can get a lot more heat out of our systems than your traditional heat pump ever could. So at 47 degrees, where traditional heat pump started to lose its capacity, we have 100% capacity down to 0 degrees. We can operate in the negative teens. And so again, and you get really high discharge temperatures out of our systems. You can still get 140 degrees discharge temperature. So when people think like, I don't really like heat pumps because they're lukewarm air, anything that doesn't feel like 130 degrees, if it's 100-degree air, it's going to warm your house. But to our temperatures, 96-degree temperature bodies, that doesn't feel real warm. And that's how old heat pumps used to work. So ours are definitely going to give you that warm heat. There's really not a need for fossil fuel heat when you have hyperheat.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, Tom Cross asked the question, would your systems work below 30 degrees outside? And you kind of answered that, but would you answer that specifically?
Yeah, and not at this time. And I can't answer that officially.
Not negative 30, but positive 30 Fahrenheit.
Oh, yes.
30
absolutely.
degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh,
not
yeah,
negative
yeah.
30.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes. In other words, if it's below freezing outside, could you still get heat out of your heat pump?
Oh, yeah. You'll still get 100% capacity in our hyperheat system. So if you have a 3-ton system, you're getting 3 tons of heat down to 0 in most of our new systems. So yes, for sure in 30 degrees. One thing we'll go back to, I wanted to touch on as far as the microbial thing. I will say that in the past, mini splits have had issues with having microbial growth on their blower wheels. So we do have a dual barrier coating on our products inside to help prevent from that dust accumulation. So again, that is something that used to be a concern, and it should be for air quality. So we have definitely invested time and thought into that in our existing and new products to alleviate that kind of issue, where sometimes you might have had mold or buildup. The biggest problem, one that we saw with that, just for people's, especially with the wall hung, if you install these prior to drywall sanding, and then you get drywall dust on inside your units, you have a good chance of growth of mold and microbial growth. So just be mindful of that when you're starting your system up.
Cool. Thank you. This is not a controls question, but more of a general Mitsubishi question. I think it's kind of an interesting one. Joseph Hauser says, does METUS have any devices or suggestions for virus mitigation in ducted and wall units? It's kind of like what you talked about a minute ago, Chad. Do you have anything to mention on that?
Charles, we could talk about, there are solutions for that. There's a lot of things, Charles, if you want to talk about anything, we want to talk about UV lights or anything like that, that's not something that we produce. You can use those. There's certainly issues with them, but Charles, you can talk about it, or I can, either one.
Yeah, we don't recommend UV lights because of the plastics. So it can degrade the plastics. For me, if it's my house, ventilation is the best way to mitigate viruses in a home. All the studies that we've looked at have shown dilution is the solution, right? So I would strongly recommend sticking to a really well ventilated strategy. But as far as viruses go, that's your best bet. And then obviously keeping things clean, like Chad mentioned a second ago, the dual barrier coating on our new wall units is really awesome for keeping your unit clean longer and extend the life of that. And so between those two things, that's really what I recommend.
The fresh air is critical with all of this, and Matt knows this, and this is especially in a climate like his, and we're talking about humidity and mold. One of the questions was, can you bring fresh air into our systems? And you absolutely can. If you're doing just a damper only, you can dump that in, or you can use an ERV in conjunction with our products, but you certainly can bring in that. We get the question all the time with ductless. You're really going to have to use a dedicated system outside of ours if you're going all ductless to your house, whether it's a fan tech that basically distributes the air, brings in fresh air. They have a HEPA filter, works really well. That's a great combination if you're going all ductless. Some people want that, but there's definitely different options for. It's hard for us to say virus. It's a very touchy subject for us to even disclose because our products are not built to be virus protection or air quality as far as like an ERV or a HEPA filtration system. That's not, most of our products are heating and cooling.
But yours can work perfectly in conjunction, like you mentioned, with other systems that do that. And I went shy of HEPA at my house. But like you mentioned, Fantech makes some HEPA filtration that's meant to just pull a return out of this room, send it through a big HEPA and dump it into this room. So if that's a big concern of yours, there's other systems out there. And like I've said for years, I really want to buy the best system that does what it's supposed to do. And then I get, gosh, I'm jumbling my words. What I'm trying to say is I'm using Mitsubishi for heating and cooling. I'm using Ultra Air or April Air for dehumidification. I'm using, someone else's ERV. Each one of those systems are independent, and I even frankly like to duct them independently. And when Positive Energy designed my HVAC system at my house, I had my dehumidification supply dumped into my supply ducts, and I said, you know what? Actually, I don't want to do that. I'd rather have one supply that's dehumidified air. I realize it's hotter, but I know when I walk by, if I get a little bit of hot air out of there, that my dehumidifier is working. And it's that visual slash sensory understanding that my system is functioning properly. And that's why I don't like magic box systems. This one box does everything, never works. It's one of the reasons why I don't like zone dampers. I remember the last time I used zone dampers was a client who insisted on having them and had them supposedly in the past, 2-story house. And after they moved in, the kids upstairs never could feel like they could get the system to work properly, and they were always complaining. And they complained to me heavily about how their zone damper didn't work. And it's because you just can't get out of one box, no matter how many zone dampers you do, 2 different temperatures that are so vastly different. It just doesn't work that way. So that's why I like Mitsubishi and the ability to use smaller equipment and to zone it properly. All right, next question. This is a great one. This is from Steve McKee. He's on a 4,500 square foot build. It's going to be Passive House certified. They've done an energy model on it. They're in the final design phase. If I want to incorporate party mode capability, who does the engineering on that? Would Mitsubishi do that, or is that someone else?
That's a great question. So there's 2 sides of that. And when we talk about our products and our actual products and our controls, so there's several things, whether it's residential, commercial. So our team, whether it's our residential sales team that works with our distributors and our contractors, we can certainly do recommendations, product design. Commercial can do lots of that. We're not really going to do a load calculation. Once we have a load calculation, we can definitely help the design. And when you get to Passive House, you're certainly getting into really particular loads, load profiles, different usages. A Passive House, and I had a client in Charlottesville, and they're a great builder, but they had just started using their house, and they left their house, and they in the middle of summer, and they decided just to open the windows up and let it go, right? They had to get some fresh air. And they came back to it, and they closed the windows and turned on our system, and it took 3 days to catch up. because they had such a enormous load put on that house that it wasn't intended to. It's a passive house. That house is like a 4 or 5 ton, general in a normal house sense, but they only had 1.5 tons because that's what it called for. So when you have a passive house, we certainly can help design that and look at that and see what the load is and what the expectation of the people that will be in the house, if that's going to be, a Matt party that's 30, or if it's a Charles party, which is 2,000, because he's a raver. So, it's, seriously, you got to know what your load's going to be and how many people you have in the house before we can answer that. And as long as you do, there's a very simple, formula for how many BTUs are put out by each person. So we can certainly help with that design. So anything else with that?
While we're on that topic, Chad, how can people watching this that are builders, that are architects, connect with your team of people that interface with high performance builders? What's the best way to kind of connect with somebody at Mitsubishi who might be able to answer questions that aren't getting answered in this webinar, or talk about moving from traditional systems to Mitsubishi systems?
Sure. So if you go to our general website, there is a section on our website for builder, and there is a contact us form, and we can then, that will come to us, and then we can distribute that to the person on our team that covers your area. Outside of our team of 10 or 12 that we have in the field, we have 100 plus residential people in the field, and then we have God knows how many distribution points around the United States, all over the United States. And each one of those distributors has a service person. So we can't always speak for the contractor. As I saw, someone had a problem in Virginia with a contractor. We have over 4,000 certified diamond contractors that are constantly being trained by us, and they have to maintain that training to maintain that status. So, if you have a diamond contractor and they're not handling your call, that's a problem for us. And that's something you can contact any of our general sales or on our website, and we can have that addressed. But generally we have super comprehensive, training, service, people in the field, our distributors, our contractors to address that. But you can reach out, you go to our website and contact us, and then they will distribute it, especially if it's a builder specific question, design. And again, we do lots of trainings for builders, for architects, for builder salespeople on how to sell high performance. So we do a lot of that to try to help the builder make that transition, whether it's technology, and again, controls. I mean, Charles has a team of controls people, and then we have controls people throughout the United States as well, just specifically for, very very complicated kind of control system that we talk about maybe for a luxury house or multifamily.
Yeah, and you mentioned something I want to touch on briefly too, Chad. You mentioned, and we haven't answered this question, but someone who had a system that was having trouble that needed some help. If you're watching this and you're a builder, remodeler, architect, you're thinking about using this system, you've not used it before, let's say you're using traditional equipment, find a diamond certified dealer in your area and ask them questions about their experience. This equipment, I don't think the Mitsubishi people will mind me saying this. This is not, just throw some Freon on and set it and forget it. This is really good equipment. I liken it a lot to a Toyota Prius. Toyota Priuses have great engineering and they have a computer brain, and that's how they're so darn comfortable and so darn reliable. And the engineering's amazing on them. But if you have a problem with your Prius, you don't just pull into a garage in the middle of nowhere, America at midnight, and any mechanic can do anything to it. You got to plug it into your computer. You got to see what the problem is. And cars and more are becoming like that. And frankly, everybody's HVAC systems are becoming that way. But there's a lot of systems out there when it comes to the HVAC world, a lot of manufacturers that are stuck on 70s or 80s technology. And you've got a tech who's not used to using Mitsubishi equipment. This is their first time. That's not who you want installing and commissioning your house. You want someone who's familiar, who's been through training, that does it a lot. And so if you're interviewing HVAC contractors and you want to use this equipment, don't be someone's guinea pig. Don't be someone's first project. Be smart about hiring a contractor that's used it and has a good track record of success. Anything you want to add on that, or anything that I said give you heartburn, Chad?
No. And I want to lead this question to Charles because it's a great point. there are a lot, when you have our systems, we do have fault codes, and this is not the same system where you pull out all your gauges like the traditional HVAC system. So Charles, I guess, what do we do today for fault codes and for consumers when they see a fault code pop up? Like, I had a fault code and I'm like, what is that fault code? When I first got my system, and it was clean the filter. So I was like, oh, all right, that's easy, but what today do contractors and builders, what can make them feel a bit better about the ability to service our equipment today with our controls? And maybe in the future, what are we looking at? Can a message, will in the future a message be sent from the homeowner's house to the installing contractor, so he knows right before he even gets there, to help speed things up? So can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, we're gonna integrate the homeowner and their installer and their service contractor, and we're gonna have them working together. We're gonna host that platform for them to work together and to basically empower the contractor with the best information we can give him so he can do his job better, and empower the homeowner with the best experience so they can get their house back on track as quick as possible, or if it's maintenance or preventative things, to keep them performing at peak for the life of the system.
And one of the things Matt and we had talked about as far as like future products, but a couple of things that are newer, like what other things can we sense in the house with our humidity or CO2, and how do we do that, or how does that integrate? And at some point, would we be able to look at, there's apps that show outdoor particulate matter, PM 2.5 levels, and if we're bringing fresh air in, how could our systems adjust to that? Can we talk about if there's a cold front coming through and we want to kind of preload the house with a little bit of heat before the temperature drops off? Are there things like that we'll be able to integrate into our system?
That's cool.
Yeah,
that's really cool. Hey, Charles, a question for you that I'm going to throw out generically. Someone asked specifically about room occupancy sensors. Talk to me about any occupant sensing that you guys have. And I'm sorry, was that a question or was that a statement, Chad? Did I jump in when Charles was supposed to answer that? I'm sorry.
It was a question to Charles, and that's why it's like, yeah.
I thought it was a statement. I apologize, Charles. Answer that and answer mine at the same time. Okay, yeah. So yes, we are adding all those technologies to our system. We absolutely see the light on the opportunity on kind of fine tuning the system operation based on air quality, based on humidity levels. One of our big initiatives right now in Mitsubishi Train is to look at moisture removal capabilities and really double down our efforts on optimizing that. And so I think our southeast and really across the country where you start seeing tight envelopes, humidity is, as you know, as a builder, one of the worst things you can have in a house. Moisture, right? So, but that's also bad for people's health as well. So they work together. So air quality and humidity are top of mind in our engineering development. And then thinking about how do we, look at weather and utility loads on the grid, and how do we manage microgrids in the neighborhood or even within the home to optimize energy usage. So we're looking at how do we dynamically optimize energy usage, not just based on where the temperature is in the space and where our compressor is working, but also kind of balancing energy usage with comfort and air quality, and with the community community requirements like the grid, the smart grid, or whatever the weather that could be. So looking at all those factors is certainly a giant puzzle to put together, but that's what we're focused on for the future. And then to answer your question about occupancy, occupancy is a big deal as well, because you can always dial things back when there's no one there, right? So that's just a kind of a basic, input to a system that you would want to be monitoring. And there's different ways to prove occupancy, right? You can prove occupancy based on motion, or you can do it based on air quality, right? So if, if there's a lot of CO2 and humidity in a room, there might be some people there, or even if there's not, you still probably want to clean that up and in case somebody does go in there. So you can look at ventilation and occupancy in that way as well.
Guys, we're coming up to the top of the hour. Can you believe that's almost an hour's worth of talking about controls and Mitsubishi? It feels like we've been talking for 7 minutes, doesn't it? And there's still like, I don't know, 30 questions. I don't know. No, we got most of them. We answered 31 questions. Not bad. We still have 13. I apologize to you if we didn't get to your question. But take Chad up on his offer if you're a builder, remodeler, or architect. Get connected with someone on their team. I've got Kimberly here, who's my Mitsubishi rep locally and interfaces with high performance builders in Austin. She's amazing. She's been out to my projects. She's been in design meetings. She answers her cell phone when I have questions. This is a great company, and I've really liked working with the Mitsubishi team. And this is the first time I've ever had their equipment in my house, and I'm frankly thrilled. I'm tickled. I wish that we could have been live from my house with full controls, but we'll do a build show on that, and we'll show you. And if you're joining us on the call or you missed this and you're watching this later, we have an ebook that my team and the Mitsubishi team has been working on this particular topic that I believe is getting sent to you if you're a registered user on this webinar next week sometime. So keep an eye on your email for that ebook. Any parting thoughts on these topics or anything we missed, Chad or Charles, before we wrap this thing up?
We could talk a long time. Charles, he could probably talk 3 hours of controls and all the nuances of how to hook these things up. So I think it was we had a lot of great questions, and I think we addressed a lot, but we can certainly do more. We have a lot of this built into our training for builders, but also our general sales team does an amazing job. They give thousands of trainings every day, every year, in which incorporates controls, the integration, and actual functionality. So again, if you do feel like you need some, we do have a lot of our own factory training centers, but also our distributors do a wonderful job of setting up their own full training centers with our equipment in there, so your contractors can actually see it, touch it, and we purposely break it so they can fix it. So there's a lot we can offer if that's a benefit to you.
That's awesome, Chad. Good deal.
I would just say I really appreciate being on the Build Show, and thank you for being a partner with us over the years, and now a customer. So, thank you everybody for your time today.
For sure. Last little plug I'll put in for Mitsubishi. When I talk about Mitsubishi and their equipment with prospects, with people that I'm talking to about building a house, and I say, look, I've used all kinds of equipment over the years, and more than anything, I've used Mitsubishi over the last 10 years. And one of the things I really like about their equipment is Mitsubishi as a company has really good technology, but they also make millions of these units. And worldwide, they're shipping the heck out of this to all kinds of different countries. And we're the one country in the world, or one of the few countries in the world, that hasn't embraced VRF and mini splits and low static and medium static pressure ducted as the norm. It's becoming more and more normal among high-end builders. I can tell you in Austin, Texas, where I am, it's becoming the norm on houses that are well-built, houses that are luxury custom homes. But that tide is turning in America, and we're kind of the last bastion. And the technology we're talking about, the reliability, it's really up there. And so I want to continue to see more and more builders move to these systems, because we're going to give our clients really comfortable houses that have great controls. Like in my house, I can control my thermostat in my master bedroom totally differently from my kids' thermostat in their bedrooms. And that's huge for me. And that also means that I've got a really efficient house as well. It also means that I can run my house on one of my zones. Someone asked me about disaster prep, but I didn't quite answer that question. But I've got my house currently set up to just run on an 8,000 watt plug-in generator, and my main 3-ton unit will run off that generator and run my party load system in case of an outage. So I can run my heating and cooling on my very efficient house off just a regular plug-in generator, because Mitsubishi makes such great equipment that uses such a low amount of electricity, that I've got great backup in terms of a disaster coming and being able to run on a pretty darn small generator. Anyways, we've passed our time now, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you guys watching this later. If you didn't watch this live, I'd love to have you sign up for our newsletter so you can get notified of this. We send an email out now twice a week, because we actually have 10 new videos a week on buildshownetwork.com. So we have a Tuesday and now we have a Friday email telling you what's new on our site. And that's how we announce these types of webinars. So if you're not currently on our email list, there'll be something below probably that you can click on to get there. And of course, you can go to buildshownetwork.com. Big thanks to Mitsubishi for sponsoring today's webinar. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Otherwise, Chad and Charles and I will see you next time.
Yes, sir.
Build Show.
See you guys.
All right, guys. Have a good day. See y'all.
All right.